RTE Soccer Women's World Cup podcast, sponsored by Cadbury. For grassroots to national level, a supporter and a half of women's football in Ireland.
Turn the world round, shut the show down. I've been spinning, couldn't slow down. On the road now.
All right, welcome along to today's RTE Soccer Women's World Cup podcast. Raf Diallo here. We're in the midst of the first round of group games, and as you probably know now, you can watch every fixture from the World Cup live on RTE television and the RTE player, including, of course, Ireland against Canada on Wednesday, which is going to be 1 o'clock Irish time. And joining me today, it's Rianna Jarrett, who's won 16 caps for Ireland, including during Vera Pauw's tenure, and RTE Sport Online's Anthony Pyne, who is joining us from Perth as well. Both of you are over there, of course, where that second Irish game will be taking place. And Rianna, I know you're over there as a supporter, so what's the experience been like following Ireland around on this side of the, I suppose, the white lines of the pitch?
Oh, it's been amazing so far. I mean, I think we were in Sydney for about 6 days, so a few days before the game and a few days after, and just the atmosphere around the place, mainly from the Irish fans, to be honest. I think just walking around the city of Sydney, we went out to Bondi Beach, we went out to Coogee Beach, and we actually bumped into so many Irish fans, some that are living out here, some that have some family playing on the team, and others then that just have genuinely been so happy to travel the whole way across the world to support the Irish women's team. And we bumped into a mother and daughter on the beach in Bondi, and we got chatting to them, and the people I were with asked her, like, did they have connections to anybody? Did they know anybody playing? And they literally just said no. They followed Ireland in the qualifiers. They were sitting at home over a glass of wine and decided, sure, look, we might as well book flights to go watch them in Australia. And I think hearing those kind of stories, because people that have no connections to anybody on the team and that genuinely just follow women's football, was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and obviously following the squad around as well, and players that you've played with for a long time. Have you been able to kind of keep in touch, or is it sort of like a bubble for the team at the moment?
So I've been chatting to them a little bit. I haven't met up with them, but I was walking through just a park there in Perth today. We went out for some brunch and went out for a walk, and I did bump into Megan Connolly and Grace Maloney, and they were with their families. So it does seem that they have had some downtime. I had always planned to maybe touch base with them in Brisbane, but it was absolutely great to bump into Megan and get chatting to her for a while. And then the same with Grace. Obviously would have played with Megan at Brighton, and obviously I grew up playing for Ireland with Grace Maloney as well. So it was really nice to meet them. And then hopefully can catch some of the other girls as well.
Yeah, and Anthony, you've just touched down in Perth, and just to be very clear, you can clarify that the image behind you, it's not a screensaver or anything. They're very much real palm trees.
Real.
Yeah.
It is a real palm tree. I look like I'm on Larry King Live or something here. I found the palm tree to come out, get a bit of scenery. I got here, just a few hours ago. We made the jump over from Brisbane. And it's very pleasant here, actually. Yeah, the rain is coming. Rianna was just saying off air that the next couple of days are going to be pretty wet, leading into the match day. But for now, it's very nice.
Yeah, and just the general vibe, and I guess also the latest team news as well, because as the team were flying out, Louise Quinn was in a protective boot, of course, from the knock she received in the game against Australia. So are there any updates in terms of her fitness and just the squad in general?
Yeah, the dreaded boot is back out. We had Denise O'Sullivan last week, was going around the team hotel wearing the boot after she got a bang on the shin. But it's precautionary. Like it's actually standard procedure when you get a bang or an injury now to put on a boot. I think it helps with the blood flow. At age recovery, we're told by the Ireland camp it's nothing to be alarmed about. She is fully expected to train tomorrow without any issues. I think she did a pool session yesterday. And then she'll be back training tomorrow on Tuesday, and she should be absolutely fine. So she got a bang on the ankle, but I think Rianna will testify. I don't think there's a game Louise Quinn plays where she doesn't come off with, a bash on the head or the leg or something. She's just that type of player, and I think she'll be absolutely fine.
Yeah, I suppose, Rianna, just on that, I mean, I guess everyone would have had full confidence given, Louise is very much battle hardened and, will put her head, foot, whatever, in the cause for Ireland and for her clubs. And so, yeah, I suppose no surprise that she's going to be ready to go for Wednesday.
No, there's no way that Louise will miss that game. And it's the same with what we're seeing with Denise and the same with Katie as well. There's a select few in that squad that no matter if there's limbs hanging off, that they will not miss a game. I think you see it with Louise in every single game she plays, that she puts her body on the line. And by all accounts, I also think she might have a little bit of a black eye for herself after the Australia game. But as I said, she's the diehard in the middle of that back line, and I've no doubt that she'll be fit and ready to play come Wednesday.
Yeah, and Anthony, we're going to just listen to a clip of Sinead Farrelly. Obviously, she's been talking to the media. She was also talking to Tony O'Donoghue at the weekend, and you've an article on RT.ie, which we'll touch on very, very shortly here. But let's listen to Sinead Farrelly first. Obviously, played in the opening game and is looking to be in line again to feature against Canada.
When you came to the team first, and I remember that first game in Austin, how nervous were you that the football would be there, the soccer would still be in you?
Yeah, that's been has caused me a lot of anxiety on this journey for sure. I've just lacked belief and trust in myself that my ability was there at this level, and that's something I still struggle with, definitely. But I think it just comes with time. Like, I wish I could have just told myself at that time, like, just give yourself grace and you're gonna make mistakes. I just wanted to be like great, like from day one that I came back. And this journey has been so vulnerable to me to be witnessed in not being great and making mistakes and wanting to do something, but my like body not being able to, or just like my speed of play not being there, my touch being off. And that's been really, really hard for me. But very good, very humbling.
But your touch wasn't off that day against the US.
I know. I guess I have very high expectations, and I come from like a past of wanting to be perfect and stuff. So I would say from the outside, I think it's a different experience from what I'm experiencing internally. So I can logically be like, okay, it was fine, but I just, I have like way different expectations for myself. And they're not healthy or anything like that, so I'm definitely working on them. But I was happy with how the game went. Like, I think I'm just trying to see, just even on this whole journey of just like being proud of myself for overcoming and showing up, because sometimes it just feels hard to even show up and believe in myself to do that. And just saying like what I did has been enough, you know.
Someone of your ability though, you don't have to be perfect. I mean, good enough is more than good enough.
Yeah. I'm trying to tell myself that, so thank you.
What did you learn from the game against Australia? An amazing occasion, and in the end, you know, Ireland deserved a point.
I know. I think it just instilled more belief in us. I think we're learning, or like shifting out of this place of, you know, giving so much respect to other teams to just being like, we can show up as ourselves and go forward from the get-go and attack teams and make something of it. So I think every game's a learning process, and I think for us, we're bummed to not get a result, at least a tie out of that game, but we're just excited to go forward and go for the wins on the next two games.
Did you have to console Marissa? I mean, you know, she plays her heart out. She's such a great athlete.
I know.
And to concede the penalty, she clearly was very upset.
So upset, as any of us would be, and we've all been there, so we all get it. But we know it's a team sport, and no one put any blame on her, obviously, and we all just like have lifted her up and supported her, and she knows that and feels that, and every single one of us has been in that same exact position, so we know what it feels like. Yeah.
Canada, you know them well, I'm sure. You've been following them, Olympic champions, and you know they've multiple appearances at World Cups. They're going to present quite the challenge. It's a long way to go to Perth as well to take them on.
I know. We're traveling so much. I don't understand.
What your thoughts on Canada in particular?
I'm more like, I'm excited. Like I'm definitely someone that puts less attention on who we're playing and more focus on us. And I think at this point, I just truly believe anything is possible. I believe in this team, and I know that if we come out the way that we can face anyone. So, yeah.
And from your own point of view, in terms of managing your own fitness load, is there 90 minutes in you in this tournament?
Yes, for sure, 100%, yeah. And it's like, as a player, you want to be on like every minute you can until you collapse, you know? And so I think that's definitely there for me. My heart is there in that to do that. So I love just giving my all and fighting till the end, and so I hope I get the opportunity to do that.
So that is Sinead Farrelly there, and she'll be hopeful of featuring against Canada on Wednesday. And Anthony, reading your piece and also the full interview with that Tony O'Donoghue did, which you can find on YouTube and rt.ie, she strikes me as a very open person, and as quite an open book, and has been open about her own journey, which has actually been kind of a difficult one to get to this point.
Yeah, extremely open and honest and sincere character, Sinead Farley, and she's got, it's one of the stories of the World Cup, the fact that she's here and playing at this tournament. I mean, she talked about a lot of, obviously, her faith, and writing in her journal is very important to her. It helps, it's therapeutic. She spoke to Tony and to the press pack about learning our on the bean phonetically, going to looking at YouTube videos so she could sing it and belt it. It was actually, it was notable in the against Australia that every Ireland player sang the national anthem word for word, and that included her and Marissa Shiva, the other US-born player. Well, she spoke a lot about her performance anxiety, and I think that is something that a lot of athletes would battle with and would understand. And be empathetic towards this sort of feeling of doubting themselves, blaming themselves, beating themselves up over mistakes. It's actually quite common, I think, and it's a difficult. It can be debilitating. It can cripple your performance, because you can go out on the pitch and play within yourself because of it. You're so afraid of letting people down and make a mistake. And I have to say, with Sinead Farley, I mean, you can't. The compliment you could pay, the highest compliment you could pay to her, you wouldn't tell by watching her play. She had some lovely moments against Australia, brilliant back heel at one stage when she was in her own half. She's such a cool customer and technically excellent footballer. But obviously, she shared to us that she had a difficult time in the run-up to that match. She said she felt physically ill, before the game. She was so nervous. So, it's a credit to her to go out and play the way she did on that kind of level. And I would say that I don't know. I thought maybe she might not start on Wednesday just because of the physical demands and the mental demands of this stage. I thought Louise Quinn might have a squeak. But if she does start, I would like to see her 10, 15 yards higher up the pitch, because I don't think we're quite seeing the best of her when she's playing deep in her own half. That's the system. I think we'll probably get to that and have a chat about that, later on. But I just think she's a player that you want playing. You want her receiving the ball on the halfway line or 5 yards inside the opposition half, because she's such good vision and passing ability. That is where she can do damage for you, and we haven't really seen that too much. In fairness, USA, France, and Australia, three, you're going to be defending more than you're attacking. But I would really like. I don't think we've seen the best for her yet, albeit she has done very well in the games that she's played.
Yeah, Rianna, just on that actually, because Farley, like a very, very technical player from what we've seen of her in an Ireland jersey thus far, and likes playing to feet, playing in small spaces, and is really, really good at that. Obviously the Australia game and perhaps the Canada game, just with the level of pressure that's going to be there and how deep Ireland are going to be, mightn't completely play to her strengths. So what do you expect in terms of Wednesday, in terms of those support players behind Kyra Carusa? Do you expect any changes there, maybe that will be maybe more suited to the flow of the game in the maybe in the first hour of it?
I don't think there'll be too many changes from what we've seen against Australia on Thursday. I do think there might be one or two, and you are probably talking in those two wider positions in Marissa Shiva and Sinead Farley that you could potentially see the changes. But then you could also maybe say they might look to get Katie McCabe a little bit higher. And I think that it's just important that we do have that support to Kyra Carusa, and I think Anthony touched on it. Maybe in the first half of that France game, we were started a little bit higher. We were forcing the French back, and even in that USA game, we were higher when we got on the ball. And it's very important that you get this support around Kyra as quick as possible. And I think that's where we need our better ball players in those higher positions. And I do think Katie McCabe is arguably one of our best players in possession. But then you're also on about Denise O'Sullivan, and yes, Denise covers every single blade of grass out there, but she's better when we have her in those higher positions, and she's able to link play, and they're able to play those kind of through balls to get the likes of Heather Payne and Katie through, and I think that you can put Sinead Farley in that category as well. I think especially that first game against the US when we were higher up the pitch, she brought that level of calmness. She wasn't panicking on the ball. Even when there was 4 or 5 US bodies around her, she was calm. She was able to pick out a pass, and you could see exactly the type of player that she is, and you can see why Vera has her in the starting 11. Obviously, against Australia, we were so much deeper, and especially in that first half, we had so little possession that you're never going to see the best out of those players. And I think that that's what can be said for that first half. Now, in the second half, we were still better, but we were still very direct in that situation. But that's what that kind of formation calls for, and that's why we have the likes of Heather Payne on the wings. But I think you've seen that when Louise Quinn came on, that there was that difference, and Abby Larkin as well. I think that they changed the tempo of the game and kind of got Ireland kick-started a little bit. So I do hope that we play even 5 yards higher, 5-10 yards higher, when you'll see a huge difference in Ireland in possession. But as Anthony was saying, there's going to be a huge amount of pressure with Canada. They're the Olympic champions, and they've got some phenomenal players, so there is that sense to it as well.
Yeah, and I'd be interested in getting your take as well, what it's like to lead the line for a Vera Pauw Ireland side. Obviously, when you were leading the line, the system was slightly different. It's obviously evolved to something slightly different. And Kira Carusa is the player at the moment tasked with leading the line from the start, and it looks like a hugely demanding role. So, from your own experience with Vera, like what were the demands she placed on you, and how, like I suppose, in training and in the build up, how did she generally communicate what she wanted?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, there has been a slight shift in the style of play since bringing Career Cruz up in that 9 leading the line, as opposed to when Heather Payne played up there. And I haven't been involved in that setup now for going on 18 months. And back when I was in, there was times where me and Heather both played up front in a 2 up front, and we looked to play on the outside of the opposition defence. So it was more of a transitional game where once we got the ball, played 1 or 2 passes, we looked to get in behind the back line then. And I feel that now we've altered that slightly with Career up top. She does give you that opportunity to play into feet, to get people involved higher up the pitch, and maybe get 1 or 2 more passes in before we go in behind. I think obviously on Wednesday, because the gaps were so big when we did win the ball back, it was very difficult for Kira Carusa. But I thought in the first half of that France game in Tala, and especially those 2 American games, she showed exactly what she can do, and she showed exactly what that difference is. When we do get the ball into feet, it allows our better players to get on the ball higher up the pitch. And especially in that USA game, we created plenty of opportunities, and not just half chances either. And I think that when we do that, when we gain ground, not just play that ball in mind, I think we've seen it with Heather for years, that it's a thankless class up there. I think Heather's a phenomenal athlete, and she showed what she can do. But I do think that we create our better opportunities, and really good opportunities, when we're on the ball higher up. So as I've said, hopefully we can get that. But in the last Euros campaign where I played in the qualifiers, it was a similar role where obviously with me and Heather playing up front together, I maybe did drop into feet a little bit more, but a lot of it in training was us making our runs on the outside of the back line, whether that's the 2 centre backs when the full backs have gone into attack, and isolating in that space. But as I said, we've come a long way from that. We still are that team that plays out of possession, and I've seen in recent times that we've been asking our midfielders to force the opposition back, which has allowed us to play higher up, and that's when we're at our best at the moment.
Yeah, and from the Canada point of view, Anthony, just in terms of team news, and I saw it this morning, so Jessie Fleming, who had missed their opening game against Nigeria, appears she's on course now to feature on Wednesday, which obviously from our point of view might not be good news. Good news for Canada, but not for ourselves.
Yeah, it's very good news for Canada. She had a calf problem, that's why she missed the first match, but she trained well today, and they expect her to be back. And I think the manager, Bev Priestman, had said that she maybe could have played in that first match, but they held her back. So I think we can expect her to start, and she's going to bring a lot to that team. You know, she's won 3 women's Super Leagues in a row with Chelsea. Very intelligent player, gives them a lot of creativity in the park, which they lacked against Nigeria. Did a lot of the ball. Now they missed the penalty. I mean, they still could have won the match. They missed the penalty, but that's the other thing. She takes their penalties. She's their penalty taker. So if she was there, she would have taken that penalty, and she has a very, very good record at taking penalties. I think she scored 3 penalties on the way to them win the Olympics, and then another one in the penalty shootout in the final. So she's a big player for them, and I think Vera Pauw has been expecting her to come back for that anyway. So look, as Rianna says, that they are a quality team. They have other quality players apart from her, but she'll add to that midfield. for anyone who watched the game against Nigeria, there was a predictability about them. Canada, they were quite deliberate in their build-up play, and certainly not as dynamic as the Australians had been against us. But she'll help them in that regard, and sort of increases the size of our task on Wednesday here in Perth.
Yeah, and the penalty that was missed, of course, was by Christine Sinclair, who has scored 190 international goals. So, a great player at 40 years old, and
40,
and an iconic figure within the game. And Rianna, you might be able to just give us a bit of context about like just how much of an icon she is, because 190 international goals. I mean, like what else can you really say?
Oh, she's phenomenal. I mean, anybody in the women's game know who she is, and she's been a hero for Canada for years. And the fact that you can say that she's still playing at that level at 40 years of age, I think speaks for itself. She's clinical. I mean, you would have put your house on her to score that penalty. But obviously it just didn't happen in that moment. And she kind of brings people into the game. She'd be strong, she'd be physical, she kind of hold up the play, kind of more dropping into feet to allow midfield runners. And I think that's probably something that we need to be careful of when we are playing them, is that, yes, we have a back three, but she does like to pull the centre backs in and kind of set the ball and allow others to get into play. But as I said, she will then get in the box as well. And 190 goals is a ridiculous stat, especially at international football. So she's definitely one to look at. But as you said, on Jessie Pimmon being back in the team, it's massive for them. She uses in class and quality as well. So the two of them together as well it's going to be a difficult task. But I do think it's one that Ireland will be up for, and I definitely think that we can get something out of it again.
Yeah, and elsewhere at the World Cup this morning, at around, I think it kicked off at 7 a.m. Irish time, Italy scored a late goal to beat Argentina 1-0. And at the moment, as we're recording, Germany are winning 6-0 against Morocco deep into stoppage time. Could go to 7. There's a VAR check there, but of course, a VAR check probably will run for about 10 minutes. So by the time we'll probably be finished by the time they've actually decided if that's a goal or not. And there's another game between Brazil and Panama to come as well. But just in terms of actually seeing the games over there, was something, Anthony, you mentioned to me a few days ago, that it's actually kind of difficult to see some of the other games that don't involve Ireland or Australia. And Rianna, you just kind of reiterated it there. Maybe you might be able to just talk about like the accessibility in terms of matches on TV. It's not as easy as I would have presumed from here.
No, well, not all the games are free to air. I mean, the Australia-Ireland match got huge figures on the 7 network, 4.8 million across all their platforms. Massive smash for them there, broke records. And they show the Australian games, so you can catch them. But apart from that, it is quite difficult. And even, you got to remember that we're in Australia's a sports crazy country, and this Women's World Cup, as big as it is, it's still competing against Aussie rules, rugby league. Even when you're in bars and stuff, sometimes you kind of have to ask, can you turn on whatever game is on? Like, there could be 5 screens in the bar, and it may not be on always. Like, there's fan zones and stuff in each of the cities, and obviously they have big screens and they show all the games. But I mean, I found it, and anecdotally others have mentioned it as well, that it can be quite difficult to see the games, and that's a shame. That's really. You want to get it to as big an audience as you possibly can. I think that Australia game showed that the audience is there, but when it is behind paywalls or not as easy as accessible, then obviously the figures, the viewership, and the audiences are going to be impacted by that.
Yeah, and Rianna, similarly, how have you found it in terms of trying to follow the non-Ireland games?
Yeah, so likewise, obviously the fan zones, you can get all the games, but Opta Sports out here have the rights to all of the games. So aside from having to pay for a subscription, it's been quite difficult to watch them if you're not in a bar. And obviously we're at the other side of the world, don't really want to spend all of our time indoors. So I was trying to get them on my phone, even in the hotel room when you're getting ready or after dinner. It has been quite difficult. As I said, I'm out here to see what Australia has to offer in terms of scenery and kind of attractions as well. So as I said, don't want to be spending all of our time inside in a bar. And obviously Australia is massive. So in terms of it's impossible to attend all of the games as well. So it is a shame that you you can't catch them on the free to air channels like you can back home. And obviously I've seen on Twitter some stats about the viewership of the Ireland games, especially in Ireland, and then also the England games as well. So obviously, as Anthony explained as well, there's a lot of sport going on out here at the moment that they're all in season as well. So they do have a lot of other sports to kind of compete with as well, which is a shame. But in terms of like attendances at games, they have been great so far. So hopefully that continues throughout the tournament as well.
Yeah, and speaking of which, in terms of matches that are on tomorrow on RTE and the RTE player, it's Colombia at 3 a.m. against South Korea in Sydney, and then New Zealand back in action again. They're playing Philippines 6:30 a.m. in Wellington, and then a big one between Switzerland and Norway at 9 a.m. Irish time. And Rianna, looking at it, I mean, Norway were group favourites in Group A, but like suddenly that looks like a must-win there against Switzerland.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if you look at Norway and how they performed in the Euros, they would have been very disappointed in that, especially the kind of hiding that they got off of England. So coming into this, they would have fancied themselves, and I think it's an absolutely fantastic story that New Zealand got their first win ever in a World Cup on their home turf in the opening game of their home World Cup is absolutely phenomenal, and you've seen videos and you've seen reactions from that. And Switzerland look value for their money in their win the other night as well. So it'll definitely be interesting, and probably two teams that have faced each other a number of times as well, obviously on the European stage. So it'll be very interesting. But the pressure is definitely on Norway to get a result there, because if they don't, then that's them realistically.
Yeah, and but among the other favourites, of course, the USA. They kind of got through the challenge of Vietnam, won 3-0, and someone a little bit, Megan Rapinoe, came on for the last half hour. So I remember you telling Cliona Foley, obviously journalist over here, just in regards to what your connection to Megan Rapinoe was. Now it's a few years ago now, so you might be able to tell me and tell our audience as well. Remind us what she's obviously an iconic figure and somebody who's very outspoken, but she was quite kind to you.
Yeah, so she's obviously an icon in the women's game, and she's done so much for the women's game, both on and off the pitch. And I was going to say I was fortunate enough to get contact from her, but probably unfortunate in the sense that it happened. So a couple of years ago, I toured my ACL for the third time when I was away on international duty with Ireland, and the media officer reached out to a couple of people. I'm an Arsenal fan, so he managed to get Jack Wilshere at the time to send me a tweet. But we'd been back in Ireland, and I got an email, and I opened up my email, and it was a personal message from Megan Rapinoe. And basically, she wrote to me saying that she'd heard that I'd done my ACL for the third time, and kind of knew from experience how much of a difficult time it was, and basically just to wish me all the best, and that perseverance and dedication over everything will get me back to the highest stage and get me back playing. And I was only 21, 22 at the time, obviously going through a difficult time. Tear my ACL again, so that was a very nice message, and something that she didn't have to do. A superstar like herself, and so funny, we played the US off the back of them winning the last World Cup on their victory tour. We were invited out to play them in the Rose Bowl, and it was kind of a picture of obviously playing against the US was amazing, but seeing her around the place and seeing all the superstars that the US have, and that yes, they're superstars, and yes, they carry themselves in a certain way, but they still have that kind of human nature side to them as well.
Yeah, that's amazing. And before we go, Anthony, just in terms of the itinerary now for Ireland over the next 24 hours or so, obviously the Canada game not very far ahead in the future now.
Yeah, training this evening at 5, and again tomorrow at 5, and so they're, as Vera Pauw said to us, their body clock is at 7, because we've got 2 hours back here. So we thought they might adjust the training schedules to account for that. 8 o'clock kickoff here on Wednesday night, but she's happy enough to train at 5. And as far as we know, everybody is okay, no fresh injuries, everyone's good to go, and we're all really looking forward to it, Raf. It's going to be, I mean, it's a huge game, and I hope Ireland just don't lose. Just don't lose and take it to that last game and see what happens. But the stakes just couldn't be higher now, because if they lose, they're gone. And I think, as I said to you a couple of nights ago, and there is a scenario that 2 points could actually get us out of this group. If Australia beat Nigeria by more than 1 goal and beat Canada by more than 1 goal, 2 points would actually do it. So loads of permutations, but look, the big thing is we just hopefully already can get a result and get this World Cup up and running and give us a chance of getting out of the group.
Yeah, I think we can all say fingers crossed for that. Hopefully that all goes well on Wednesday. But for today, anyway, at least there is a highlight show, of course, on RT2, the RT Player, at 8 p.m, all of today's games. But for today's podcast, we'll be back tomorrow. It'll be with Mikey Stafford. But Anthony, the palm trees have disappeared, I think, with the night sky at the moment. And Rianna, thanks very much for your time as well.
Thanks for having me.
Turn the world round, shut the show down. I've been spinning, couldn't slow down. On the roll now.
A supporter and a half likes, shares, comments, and tweets. Cadbury sponsors RTE Soccer Women's World Cup podcast.